at my own son's birthday party, a party I'd paid for, every single dollar of it. I arrived a little late and heard something through the open window that stopped my heart cold. My daughter-in-law's voice rose above the music, clear and sharp and laughing. Thank goodness that worthless old man didn't show up tonight. Now we can really celebrate. And then came the laughter. 47 people, 47 guests I had personally funded, raising their glasses, laughing at me, at the man standing outside in his best suit, holding a $4,000 gift he'd wrapped himself. I didn't go inside. I walked back to my car, sat down in the silence, and made one phone call. 15 minutes later, the party was over. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Edward Calloway. I'm 68 years old, and I've spent the last 43 years calling Phoenix, Arizona my home. I retired from architecture 3 years ago after selling my firm, a company I built from nothing, from late nights and early mornings and decades of stubborn belief that good work matters. I always believed that family was the foundation of everything worth building. Turns out, I should have paid more attention to cracks. My son, Marcus, is 35 now. There was a time when he called me every single Sunday just to talk. Not because he needed anything, just because he wanted to. When he was 7 years old, he'd wait by the front window for my car to pull into the driveway. The moment he saw the headlights, he'd sprint to the door, shouting, "Dad's home, Dad's home." He wanted to be an architect just like me. He used to draw little houses on napkins during dinner. Wobbly walls, square windows, crooked chimneys. I kept every single one. I kept them all. But somewhere between that little boy and the man he became, something shifted. Or rather, someone shifted it. Vanessa came into our lives 4 years ago at a charity gala. She was stunning, the kind of stunning that makes grown men forget themselves and makes wise women cautious. Marcus fell immediately, completely, the way a tall building collapses when its foundation is wrong, all at once and with tremendous force. Within 6 months, they were engaged. I tried to be happy. I tried with everything I had, because I love my son, and I desperately wanted to love the woman he loved. But there were things I noticed, small things at first. The way her eyes would do a quiet calculation whenever I mentioned finances. How she'd steer conversations, gently, expertly, toward my retirement plans, my savings, my estate. The way her smile could light up a room, but never, not once, fully reached her eyes when she looked at me. The wedding was lavish. I paid for most of it, $87,000. Vanessa's family contributed nothing, citing financial difficulties. Then Marcus asked me to cover the honeymoon too. Another $12,000. I said yes, because that's what fathers do, isn't it? We say yes. We bleed quietly and call it love. The first real crack appeared 6 months after the wedding. Marcus called asking for $150,000 to expand his marketing agency. He said it was a sure thing. I reviewed the business plan he sent over, if you could even call it that. The numbers didn't add up. I told him no, and the silence on the phone lasted just long enough for me to hear Vanessa's voice in the background, low and insistent, like a machine turning over. Marcus's tone changed in an instant. He called me selfish, said I was sitting on millions while he was out there struggling to build something real. I tried to explain I'd worked for every dollar, and I wanted him to know that same pride of earning, but he hung up before I could finish the sentence. After that, the Sunday calls stopped. The dinner invitations thinned out, and when I did see them, Vanessa's gaze would narrow just slightly whenever I spoke. Like I was a problem she was still calculating how to solve. Marcus echoed her opinions more and more. His own voice grew quieter, and still I kept trying. Fathers do that too. We keep trying long after we probably should. 3 years ago, I gave him the house on Camelback Road, the one I designed myself back in the 90s when Marcus's mother and I were still married, still in love, still dreaming of growing old together in those rooms. The property was worth $847,000. I had the gift deed drawn up, and my attorney, a man named Gerald Whitmore, my lawyer and my friend for 22 years, insisted on including what he called a reversionary clause, a provision that would return ownership to me if certain conditions were violated. Just a formality, Gerald said. Protection against unforeseen circumstances. I signed it without giving it much thought. Marcus and Vanessa were thrilled. For about 3 weeks, everything felt almost warm again, almost like it used to be. Then the requests started coming again. Could I help with their property taxes? Could I loan money for renovations? Could I update my will so Marcus received everything immediately, rather than through trust? Each time I said no, the temperature dropped a little more. If you've ever given everything to someone you love and felt it was never enough, take a breath. Stay with me, because this story is about to show you that it's never too late to reclaim who you are. 2 weeks ago, Marcus called to invite me to his birthday party. 35 was a milestone, he said. Vanessa was planning something special. His voice sounded warm, genuine even, and foolish, hopeful old man that I am. I let myself believe it. I let that warmth reach down into the cold place in my chest and melt just a little. I spent $23,450 on that party. The caterer alone was $8,000. Premium open bar, a live jazz trio, decorations that turned their backyard into something from a luxury magazine. I paid every invoice without complaint. It was my son's birthday. I wanted it to be perfect. The day of the party, a former client called needing urgent help reviewing plans for a 15-story building. Old habits die hard. The meeting ran long, and by the time I pulled up to Camelback Road, it was nearly 8:30. The street was packed with cars. Through the windows, I could see the party alive with light and laughter. The jazz trio I'd hired was playing something soft and beautiful. I sat in my car for a moment, straightening my tie, checking my reflection. I'd worn my best suit. The charcoal gray one Marcus always said made me look distinguished. I walked up the curved driveway, carrying the gift I'd wrapped myself. A vintage camera Marcus had mentioned wanting years ago. $4,000 at an estate sale. I'd thought about his face when he opened it, the surprise, the smile, maybe a moment of the old closeness, and that thought had kept me warm all day. I was reaching for the doorknob when I heard Ashley's voice rise above the music. "Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please?" The music lowered. A glass tapped. I paused, smiling to myself, deciding to wait outside for just one moment. Let her have her toast. Then I'd walk in. "Marcus, you've worked so hard to build your business, to create the life we have together, and we've done it despite certain obstacles. So here's to us, and to this beautiful home that is finally, truly ours." I was still smiling. And thank goodness that worthless old man didn't show up tonight. Now we can really celebrate. The laughter erupted, loud, bright, free. I don't know how long I stood there. Time did something strange. My hand was still on the doorknob. The gift box was still in my other hand. And through the window, I watched 47 people, every one of them there because of me, laughing at the mention of me. Then I heard my son's voice. "To be fair, honey, he's probably in his workshop building another birdhouse or whatever, completely out of touch with the real world." More laughter. Someone shouted, "At least he has money, even if he won't share it." And Vanessa, laughing, glass raised, "Oh, we'll get our share eventually. Just have to wait for nature to take its course. Hopefully sooner rather than later." I stood there for exactly 30 seconds. Then I set the gift box down on the doorstep. I walked back to my car, each step measured, each breath controlled. My hands didn't shake. I sat in the driver's seat in complete silence and looked at that beautiful house, the house I had designed, the house I had given, the house where my son had just laughed while his wife wished for my death. I pulled out my phone and called Gerald. "Pull the gift deed on the Camelback property," I said. My voice surprised me. Too calm, too steady for a man whose heart was in pieces. The one with the reversionary clause. A pause. Papers shuffling. "Richard, what's going on?" I told him. "That's unambiguous public humiliation," Gerald said, and his voice had changed completely. 47 witnesses. The clause is enforceable. "But Richard, if we do this, how fast do you want to move?" "Tonight." Another pause. "Edward, this is scorched earth. There's no going back. I paid for the party they're using to celebrate my absence. I paid for the house they think is finally truly theirs. I paid for everything, Gerald, and they called me worthless." Silence. Scorch earth, I said. Activate the clause. I hung up before he could argue. And 15 minutes later, I received a text from Gerald that changed everything. 3 words. The judge agreed. But what happened when those deputies knocked on the door, in the middle of the party, champagne glasses still in hand, is something you won't believe. Stay for part 2. The text from Gerald arrived at 10:02 in the evening. Morrison agreed. Filing now. Court order within 90 minutes. You sure? I typed back 2 words. Absolutely. Proceed. I got out of my car. I needed air, needed to stand under the Phoenix sky and feel something solid beneath my feet. The party continued inside. Music and laughter and lights spilling across the lawn. None of them knew I had been there. None of them knew I had heard every word. I drove to my workshop on North Scottsdale Road, a small commercial space I'd rented for 15 years, filled with woodworking tools, half-finished furniture, and the smell of sawdust and varnish. My sanctuary. I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and stood in the center of the room. A dining table sat on the workbench. Cherrywood, 3 legs attached, the 4th waiting. Hand-carved details, the kind of craftsmanship that takes time and patience and love. Marcus had called it birdhouses to get a laugh from people drinking my champagne. I picked up the 4th leg and the wood glue. My hands were steady. I had work to do. At exactly 11:32 that night, my phone buzzed. It's done. They're out. Deputies confirmed compliance. House is secured. Are you okay? I set down the sandpaper and looked at that message for a long time. Was I okay? I had just evicted my son from his home, in the middle of his own birthday party, in front of 47 guests. I had spent 43 years being his father, and in one phone call, I had sent officers to his door. Was I okay? I texted back. I'm fine. Thank you, Gerald. Another buzz. This isn't over. They'll fight this. Let them fight, I replied. I have nothing but time. I put the phone face down on the workbench and picked up the sandpaper again. Are you still with me? Because what happens next, what they found out in the days that followed, made everything far darker than a cruel birthday toast. Don't move. The next morning, Gerald called while I was making coffee. They're out, he said without preamble. The deputies executed the order at 10:15. Marcus opened the door, thinking it was a noise complaint from the neighbors. How did he react? Shocked, confused, then furious when the court officer explained the situation. A pause. Vanessa became hysterical, screamed that it was a mistake, threatened to sue everyone in the room. She tried reaching attorneys, but it was Saturday night. No one answered. The guests cleared out within 20 minutes. The deputies gave them 60 minutes to pack essentials. They used all of it. Another pause. One of the officers noted that several neighbors came outside to watch. Quite a scene, apparently. I took a long sip of coffee. Strange how normal things continue while someone's life falls apart. On the 5th call for Marcus, I answered. Dad, what the? He caught himself, his voice barely holding together. What happened last night? The police showed up at my birthday party and kicked everyone out. They said you're taking the house back. That's correct, I said. That's correct? That's all you have to say? You evicted us during my birthday party in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how humiliating? Humiliating, I said quietly. I let the words sit between us like something broken. You want to talk to me about humiliation, Marcus? Silence. I was there last night, I said. I heard Vanessa's toast. The one about how wonderful it was that the worthless old man didn't show up. I heard you laugh. I heard you tell everyone I'm out of touch with the real world. A long, hollow quiet. Dad, that was just we were drinking. It was a joke. A joke. I kept my voice level. What part was funny, son? The part where your wife called me worthless? Or the part where she said she hoped nature would take its course, sooner rather than later, so you could have my money? She didn't. She wasn't. He was floundering now. 47 guests, Marcus. I paid for every single one of them to be there. $23,000 for a party celebrating my absence. And you think that's a joke? Look, I'm sorry, okay? She gets carried away sometimes. We'll apologize. We can work this out. No, I said. We can't. You made your choice when you stood there and laughed. I'm just making mine. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. 12 days after the eviction, I met a woman named Rachel Monroe for coffee in Tempe. Private investigator. I'd used her services once before, years ago, when a contractor had filed suspicious damages against my firm. She'd proven it was fraud inside of a week. I told her everything. The party, the eviction, Vanessa's counter-campaign, calling my sister, calling former colleagues, telling everyone I'd suffered some kind of mental break, that I was senile, that my lawyer was manipulating me. I want to know where their money is coming from, I said. Marcus's agency is struggling, but they've been living like money doesn't exist. Where is it going? And more importantly, where is it coming from? Rachel took notes. Financial investigation. 2 weeks. I'll have a preliminary report. She did. I'll never forget the afternoon she slid that manila folder across the table. Your instincts were right, she said. They're hiding something. Marcus's agency was failing. I knew that much. But what I didn't know, what made my hands tighten around that folder until my knuckles went pale, was the rest. 6 months ago, Vanessa had taken out a home equity loan on the Camelback property. $185,000. That's not possible, I said. They didn't own that house. The gift deed had restrictions. She forged the documents, Rachel said quietly. Altered the gift deed to remove the reversionary clause. Submitted it as proof of ownership. The loan company didn't dig deeper. They saw an $800,000 house with no mortgage and approved it immediately. The room went very still. That's fraud, I said. Federal mortgage fraud. Maximum sentence of 30 years. Rachel leaned back. It also explains why she panicked when you evicted them. The moment you reclaimed the house, that loan was called in. She'd be exposed. I sat with that for a long time. Where did the money go? Rachel flipped to the next page. $70,000 to pay off credit cards. $45,000 for a new Mercedes. The rest spent on restaurants, vacations, shopping. It's all gone, Edward. Every penny. They're not just broke, they're drowning. I closed the folder. My son's wife had forged my legal documents. Committed a federal crime using property I had given her in good faith. Spent the proceeds. And when I'd taken back the house, for reasons that had nothing to do with money, I had unknowingly set in motion the chain of events that would expose everything she'd done. I drove home in silence. I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't angry. I felt cold. The way a building feels cold when you step inside it in winter and realize the foundation is compromised and has been for a very long time. The fraud was the beginning. What Vanessa did next, after she realized I knew, was something I never expected. She didn't retreat. She escalated. And the next weapon she reached for was one that, if it had worked, would have taken everything from me. Part 3 is where this story gets frightening. I called Marcus that evening, not to threaten, not to gloat, just to give him a choice. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, my workshop, I said. Come alone. I don't know if. Alone, Marcus. If Vanessa comes with you, I won't open the door. They both came. I watched them pull up through the workshop window. They sat in the car for several minutes. Vanessa gesturing sharply, Marcus shaking his head. He looked exhausted already, thinner, pale, like a man who hadn't slept since the world shifted under his feet. They both got out. I met them at the door. I said alone. I told Marcus. We're married, Vanessa said, her voice cutting. Whatever you have to say to him, you can say to both of us. I looked at my son. He couldn't meet my eyes. Fine. Come in. I spread the documents across the workbench. Loan applications, bank statements, property records, the original gift deed beside the altered copy she'd submitted. 6 months ago, I said, Vanessa took out a home equity loan on this house. The problem is she didn't have the legal right to do that. The gift deed had restrictions. She removed those restrictions from the copy she submitted to the bank. That's not, Vanessa started. You forged legal documents, I said. That's federal mortgage fraud. Maximum sentence of 30 years in federal prison. Marcus grabbed the papers. His hands are shaking as he read through them. And then I watched it happen, watched the understanding move across his face like weather. Like a slow, terrible dawn. Vanessa, he whispered, is this real? It's a mistake, she said quickly. The bank made an error. I didn't forge anything. Don't lie to him. My voice was quiet, but there was nothing soft in it. The private investigator I hired found everything. The original deed, the altered version, the loan disbursement, the Mercedes, every single transaction. You hired a detective to spy on us. The shock in her face shifted, and something colder moved in behind it. I'm thorough, I said simply. Turns out I had good reason to be. Marcus set down the papers. His voice was barely a whisper. $185,000. Where did it all go? And then Vanessa did something I hadn't expected. The mask slipped. Completely. The charm, the calculation, the careful performance. All of it dropped away, and what was left was raw and cornered and vicious. You want the truth? Yes. I took that loan. Yes, I altered the deed. Because you're a selfish old man who would rather sit in this pathetic workshop making furniture nobody wants than help your own son succeed. That money should have been ours anyway. It wasn't yours to take, I said. But you gave us the house and then ripped it away the second we said something you didn't like. You're cruel and petty, Anne. Careful, I said softly. You're confessing to a federal crime in front of a witness. That stopped her cold. She looked around wildly, as if expecting FBI agents to materialize from behind the workbench. You're recording this? No, but Marcus heard you. Didn't you, son? Marcus had gone completely pale. He was staring at Vanessa like she was a stranger. You really did it, he said. You forged documents and took out a loan we can't pay back. We would have paid it back if he hadn't stolen the house. I didn't steal my own property, I said. I reclaimed it after you violated the terms of the gift. Jason, she turned to him, and there was desperation in her voice now, real and naked. He's trying to manipulate you. He wants to turn you against me. Can't you see that? But Marcus was still staring at the loan documents. He stood up slowly. I need air. He walked out of the workshop without looking back. Vanessa and I were alone. She turned to me, and what I saw in her eyes now was pure calculation. The tears had been performance. The desperation, performance. She was already looking for the next angle. What do you want? She asked. Her voice was flat, businesslike. I want you to understand that I have everything I need to send you to federal prison, I said. But I want to give Marcus a choice first. He can choose to walk away clean, or he can stay and watch you go to trial. You're trying to destroy our marriage. Your fraud did that. She left without another word. I watched her get in the car, watched Marcus straighten up, wipe his face. They sat there in silence for 5 long minutes. Then they drove away. I know what some of you are feeling right now. You're thinking, did he go too far? Was there another way? I asked myself the same question. But what Vanessa did next removed every last doubt I had. 2 days later, a woman with a clipboard knocked on my door. Richard Turner? I'm Susan Martinez, Arizona Adult Protective Services. I need to ask you some questions about a complaint we received. Adult Protective Services. I stepped aside without a word and let her in. She told me a formal complaint had been filed by my daughter-in-law. Concerns about my cognitive decline. Possible manipulation by my attorney. The implication was clear. Vanessa wanted me declared mentally incompetent. If she could do that, she could challenge the eviction, attack the fraud investigation, and paint every decision I'd made as the confused fumbling of a senile old man. Over the next 30 minutes, I walked Susan Martinez through everything. The birthday party, the court order, Veronica's investigation, my medical record from 3 months. Earlier, perfect health, perfect clarity. Letters from former business partners. The fact that the reversionary clause had been Gerald's idea, not mine, which rather undermined the theory that I was being manipulated by him. Susan closed her folder. I've seen enough, Mr. Turner. You're clearly of sound mind. I'll be closing this case with a finding of no cause for intervention. She paused at the door. I've handled hundreds of these cases. Families fighting over money brings out the worst in people. Your daughter-in-law isn't the first person to try using our system as a weapon. A long look. Be careful. Desperate people do unpredictable things. She was right. 3 hours later, I received an email from a reporter at the Phoenix Tribune. Subject, request for comment on family dispute. Attached were screenshots of social media posts. Vanessa's Facebook, her Instagram, all telling a heartbreaking story about a cruel, possibly senile father who had thrown his pregnant daughter-in-law out onto the streets over a misunderstood joke. Pregnant. That was new. I forwarded it to Gerald with one line. She's taking this public. What do you recommend? His reply was immediate. Don't respond yet. Let me make some calls. This could work in our favor. I didn't see how, but then I remembered something. Something I had installed in that house 27 years ago and never removed. Something Vanessa had never thought to look for. Security cameras. High-end. Time-stamped. Backed up automatically to cloud storage. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the footage from the night of the party. And there she was, beautiful, laughing, champagne glass raised, and the audio was crystal clear. Thank goodness that worthless old man didn't show up tonight. I called my friend Kevin Torres, former colleague, now on the Phoenix City Council. Kevin, I said, I need to arrange a press conference. Kevin went quiet for a moment. Then he said, Richard, you sure you want to do this? Once it's out there, you can't take it back. It's already out there, I said. Ashley made sure of that. I'm just choosing to tell the complete story. The Phoenix Community Center's press room was smaller than I expected, but every chair was filled. I counted at least 15 journalists. Camera crews from 3 local news stations. The reporter from the Tribune sat in the front row, pen ready. Gerald stood beside me. His paralegal carried 3 folders of documentation. Everything organized chronologically, cross-referenced, bulletproof. You sure about this? Kevin asked quietly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. At 2 o'clock precisely, Kevin introduced me. I walked to the podium and looked out at all those faces, curious, skeptical, waiting. My name is Edward Calloway. I began. I'm a retired architect, 68 years old. I've lived in Phoenix for 43 years. 2 weeks ago, I evicted my son and daughter-in-law from a house I own on Camelback Road. They've since claimed I did this irrationally, possibly due to mental incompetence. I'm here today to set the record straight. I pressed the remote. The original gift deed appeared on the screen behind me. I walked them through everything. The house, the gift deed, the reversionary clause. Then I looked out at the room and said, on the evening of the party, I arrived late and heard something through an open window. I have security camera footage from inside that house. With your permission, I'd like to play it. I nodded to Gerald. The screen switched to video. The image was sharp, the audio immaculate. And there was Vanessa, glass raised, face radiant with laughter, and her voice filled the room. Thank goodness that worthless old man didn't show up tonight. Now we can really celebrate. Then Marcus. To be fair, honey, he's probably in his workshop building another birdhouse or whatever. Completely out of touch with the real world. More laughter. Then Vanessa again. Oh, we'll get our share eventually. Just have to wait for nature to take its course. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I paused the video. The silence in that press room was absolute. I could see it moving across their faces. Shock, then something like grief. The way people look when they witness something that shouldn't exist in the world. I stood outside my own house. I said quietly, listening to 47 guests I had paid for, laugh at the worthless old man. Listening to my daughter-in-law express the hope that I would die soon so they could inherit my estate. I let that sit for a moment. Then I pressed the remote again. But that wasn't all I found. The bank records appeared. The loan application. The altered gift deed beside the original. 6 months ago, my daughter-in-law took out a home equity loan of $185,000 using my house as collateral. The problem is, she didn't legally own that house. She forged my documents, removed the reversionary clause, submitted the altered deed to the bank. That is federal mortgage fraud. The room erupted. Cameras swung. Reporters leaned forward. The Tribune journalist's pen was flying. She used the loan money to pay off credit card debts, purchase a new Mercedes, and fund their lifestyle. Every penny is gone. And now that I've reclaimed the house, that loan is in default. The bank will investigate. When they do, they'll find the forged documents, and then they'll find the FBI. Questions came rapid fire for 20 minutes. I answered every one, calmly, precisely, with a document for every claim. At the end, I said this. I want to be clear. I am not a vindictive man. I'm not doing this for revenge. But I am done being treated as worthless by people who want my money and not my company. I built a business over 4 decades. I I raised my son the best I knew how. I gave generously because I believed family came first. But when someone uses that generosity against you, when they forge your documents and celebrate your absence, there have to be consequences. I gathered my notes. The security footage is time-stamped and backed up to multiple secure locations. The financial records are documented and verified. The court orders are public record. This isn't he said, she said. This is documented fact. Walking out of that community center, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was out. Not my version or Vanessa's version. The documented, verifiable truth. My phone rang before I reached my car. Unknown number. You just destroyed my life. Vanessa's voice was shaking. You destroyed everything. No, Vanessa. You did that when you forged those documents. I just made sure people knew about it. Jason will never forgive you for this. Maybe not. But at least he'll know the truth about you. I'll fight this. You'll lose, I said calmly. Everything I presented today was documented. You can't lie your way out of facts. I hung up. By evening, the story was everywhere. The Tribune, Fox 10, ABC 15. Every broadcast led with the security footage. Vanessa's social media accounts were deleted by morning. The GoFundMe was gone. The carefully constructed narrative of the victimized daughter-in-law had evaporated in the face of documented truth. But Vanessa wasn't finished. A word appeared in black spray paint on my workshop window the next morning. Liar. I stood there with my coffee cup and felt a cold, still anger settle somewhere deep in my chest. This wasn't legal maneuvering anymore. This was harassment, pure and simple. I photographed it, filed a police report, had security cameras installed around my property within the hour. Then I called Gerald, filed a criminal fraud complaint. Let the FBI handle it. What changed? He asked. She vandalized my property. She tried to hack my bank accounts 3 nights ago. The attempt traced back to the Marriott where she's staying. She filed a false complaint with Adult Protective Services. She conducted a smear campaign against me with my own family. She has committed one crime on top of another, and she is not going to stop. A pause. I'll have everything ready tomorrow morning. That evening, I sat in my workshop, the one with the freshly cleaned window, and waited for the deadline I'd given Marcus to arrive. He called at 8 in the morning. I filed the papers an hour ago, he said. Divorce petition. It's done. I set my coffee cup down very carefully. How did Vanessa react? She doesn't know yet. I did it while she was out meeting with Parker. I packed my things from the hotel and left the papers on the bed. A pause. Dad, I know this doesn't fix everything. I know I've been terrible to you. But I want you to know I'm not defending her anymore. Whatever consequences come, she earned them. Oh, Marcus, tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. The next morning, Gerald and I walked into the FBI's Phoenix field office carrying a folder 3 inches thick. The agent who received us was a woman in her early 40s named Claire Ashford. She listened for 90 minutes without interrupting, asking sharp, precise questions and taking notes the way a good architect studies a blueprint, looking for the load-bearing details, the structural truth. When we finished, she sat back and said, "This is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I have ever received. You've handed us everything." "I'm thorough," I said. It was the 3rd time I'd said that to someone in the past 2 weeks, and I meant it more each time. Based on this evidence, I'll be recommending immediate investigation and likely prosecution. The forged documents alone are sufficient. Combined with the attempted unauthorized access to your bank accounts and the harassment, this demonstrates a clear pattern of criminal conduct. She paused. 2 to 3 weeks before we bring charges. Maybe less. As we left the building, Gerald put a hand on my shoulder. "It's over, Edward. You've done everything right." 10 days later, 2 federal agents knocked on the door of the Marriott on East Camelback Road. Vanessa Turner, the woman who had stood in my house, raised a glass, and called me worthless, was arrested on federal charges of bank fraud, wire fraud, and making false statements to a financial institution. I watched the news footage that night alone in my kitchen. And what I felt, I'll tell you in part 5. Because it wasn't what I expected. Every station in Phoenix ran the footage. Not the security footage from the birthday party that had already aired. This was new footage. Vanessa in handcuffs, being walked out of the Marriott into the flat desert sunlight, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. The same woman who had laughed about waiting for nature to take its course. The same woman who had called me worthless in front of 47 people. I watched it alone in my kitchen, drinking coffee, and I want to be honest with you about what I felt. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't a victory. It was something quieter and heavier. Something close to grief. Not for Vanessa, but for the years that couldn't be recovered, for the version of my son that might have existed if none of this had ever happened, for the crooked little birdhouse sitting in a photo in a box in my storage room. Marcus called that evening. I saw the news. Are you all right? I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me feels terrible. Mostly I just feel relieved, like I can breathe. That's how I feel too. A long pause. Two men on either side of a phone, each holding something broken, neither sure how to set it down. Dad, I know I can't undo the last 4 years. I know what I did to you, the way I spoke to you, the way I let her speak to you, the way I stood in that room and laughed. He stopped, and in the silence, I heard it, that raw, scraped sound in a man's voice when he is not performing remorse, but actually feeling it. The difference is unmistakable. I'd heard both from him over the years. This was real. I'm starting therapy, he said quietly, to understand how I let it get this far, how I let her change me, how I became someone you had to protect yourself from. I didn't say anything for a moment. Outside my kitchen window, the Phoenix sunset was burning orange and gold across the sky. Are you done being that person? I asked. Yes, he said. I promise you. I want to pause here and ask you something genuinely. Have you ever had to let someone you deeply love hit absolute rock bottom before they finally heard you? Before they finally came back? Drop a comment. I read them. Your words matter to me. 2 weeks later, Ashley's attorney Glenn Parker filed a motion to be removed from her case. Legal speak for. She lied to me, and I'm not going down with this ship. 3 weeks after that, the federal prosecutor offered Vanessa a plea deal. Plead guilty to 1 count of mortgage fraud. 18 months in federal prison. Full restitution of the $185,000. 3 years of supervised release. The alternative was trial, and up to 30 years if convicted on all counts. Her public defender advised her to take the deal. She did. The sentencing hearing was on a gray Tuesday morning. Gerald sat beside me in the gallery of the federal courthouse. Vanessa was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, and I want to tell you something true. She looked small. All of the calculation, all of the performance, all of that relentless, weaponized charm. It was gone. What was left was a woman who had made terrible choices and had run out of road. The judge was silver-haired and sharp-eyed and wasted no words. Ms. Turner, mortgage fraud is not a victimless crime. You defrauded a financial institution. You violated the trust of a man who had given you a substantial and generous gift. And you did so with deliberate and calculated intent to deceive. The court finds your actions deeply troubling. Vanessa's shoulders were shaking. She was crying quietly, without theater, which was the most human I had ever seen her. However, the court acknowledges your cooperation and your acceptance of responsibility. The plea agreement is accepted. 18 months in federal custody, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and full restitution of $185,000. The gavel came down. Vanessa turned to look at the gallery before the marshals let her out. Her eyes found mine, and I prepared myself for anger, for defiance, for the hard, cold stare she'd worn in my workshop. Instead, she simply nodded. Not at me, exactly. At the truth, maybe. At the consequence, something she'd been running from since the very beginning. Then she was gone. It's done, Gerald said softly beside me. Yes, I said. It's done. Outside the courthouse, a few reporters called out questions. I gave them one sentence. Justice has been served. My focus now is on rebuilding my relationship with my son and moving forward with my life. And that was true. That was the only true thing that mattered now. Marcus came to see me the following weekend. He'd moved into a small apartment in Tempe. Nothing lavish, but his. He was rebuilding his agency slowly, honestly, with a real business partner and projections that actually added up. He'd been in therapy every week. He was cooking for himself. He was, for the first time in years, living in a way I recognized as genuinely his. He brought his son, my grandson, 6 years old, with Marcus's eyes and a gap-toothed smile that reached all the way up to something I hadn't felt in a very long time. The boy walked around the workshop wide-eyed, running his small fingers along the edge of the workbench, looking at the tools like they were artifacts from some magnificent other world. "Grandpa," he said finally, "can we build something?" I had to look away for a moment, because in that small, simple question, in those 4 words from a 6-year-old boy, I heard the echo of another voice from 30 years ago asking the same thing. And the loss and the love and the grief and the gratitude all arrived at the same moment, and they nearly undid me completely. I pressed my hand flat on the workbench and breathed. "Yes," I said, "we can build something." We built a small wooden box together. Nothing fancy. Rough edges. A little lopsided. The lid didn't quite sit straight. But when we finished it, my grandson held it up in both hands and looked at it the way children look at something they've made, with the pure, uncomplicated joy of someone who doesn't yet know how to pretend they feel something they don't. I held it together in that workshop, but barely. The cherrywood dining table I'd been building throughout all of this, through the eviction and the investigation and the press conference and the arrest and the sentencing, was finally finished. For legs. Hand-carved details. A surface sanded smooth as calm water. The kind of table that could seat a family for 30 years and still hold. I donated it to a charity auction. It sold for $3,000, which went entirely to a shelter for families facing eviction. It seemed right. It seemed like the right kind of ending. One evening in late summer, I was in the workshop listening to Coltrane sanding a new piece of oak when Gerald called. "The defamation lawsuit Ashley filed against you was officially dismissed today. The judge ruled it frivolous given her criminal conviction. Also, the bank received the first restitution payment from the court. It'll take her years to pay it all back, but it started. Thank you, Gerald." After I hung up, I stood in my workshop in the quiet and the sawdust and the amber smell of varnish, and I let myself feel all of it. Every piece of it. The birthday party. The words through the window. The walk back to the car, the phone call, the eviction, the investigation, the press conference, the arrest, the courthouse, the gavel, and now this. The workshop, the Coltrane, the unfinished oak, the fading summer light through the window, where a liar had once been sprayed in black paint and was now completely, thoroughly gone. I thought about what it means to be called worthless by someone you loved and helped and gave everything you had to give. I thought about what it costs a man to stand up in a room full of cameras and say, "This is what happened, and this is documented truth." I thought about my grandson's gap-toothed smile. I thought about Marcus, cooking dinner in his small apartment in Tempe, doing the quiet work of becoming himself again. I was not worthless. I never had been. I had been generous to the wrong people in the wrong proportions, and I had paid for that for years. But I'd also been a man who built things that lasted, buildings and a business, and a relationship with my son that was, against every odd, slowly, carefully being rebuilt from its foundations. That is worth something. That is worth everything. A few days later, I texted Marcus. 4 words. "Sunday dinner. You cook." His response came back in under a minute. "I'll be there. I'm making that pasta thing you showed me. The one I always burned." I laughed out loud in my empty workshop. Actually, I laughed. And it was real, and it was warm, and it filled the room. Maybe we couldn't reclaim the past, I thought, running my hand along the smooth oak grain. But we could build something new, something honest, something real. And that is worth more than any revenge. That is the only thing at the end of all of this that was ever worth anything at all. Tell me in the comments, has a family member ever made you feel worthless? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you gave everything to? And if you've stood your ground, if you've reclaimed your dignity, share that story. You're not alone. Every person listening has something they've carried. Let this be the place you set it down for a moment. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Your presence here, wherever you're listening from, means more than you know.